Steve, sit down. Get closer. Don't be scared, I don't bite. A bit closer, please. Okay, now I'll... Meet Demodex folliculorum, and right now it's on Steve's nose. And not only on his nose, but also on yours, dear viewer. It goes about its business, eating or preparing to breed. What, you feel like scratching your nose, hoping to squash the pest? Don't even try, because if you kill it, a new one will take its place. This is how our body works. We're like a whole planet for these animals. But if land creatures end up beneath human skin, it's time to get really scared. Today, you'll find out why spiders crawl into the human body, why millions of arthropods live on our skin, what tiny creatures live in the air, who's trying to reach us from space, how Smith, no, the other Smith, made a spacesuit to reach the stars, and much more. Let's go. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of crawling creatures. It's not that I'm afraid of them, I just don't like them. But after reading this story, I almost got a phobia. Why? You're about to see. Dylan Thomas from Australia was enjoying his holiday in Bali when he discovered a strange red trail on his stomach one morning. The trail got longer as time went on, and it looked like someone scratched the guy with the tip of a knife. Thomas went to the hospital, but they told him it was an insect bite and wouldn't do much more. Later, it turned out it was not a bite, but the entire tropical spider. I mean, the spider beneath the skin. The creature, the size of a matchstick, burrowed into the guy's skin through a scar from a recent appendix removal. 3 days. For 3 days, the spider has been living, or maybe even crawling inside the guy. I don't even want to imagine what it felt like. The thing is, you have a whole bunch of spiders living on your body right now, or rather arachnids, but there are really a lot of them. Demodex folliculorum are parasitic mites that live in or near mammals' hair follicles. The human body harbors 2 species of these mites, and in total, there can be more than 2 million of them throughout your body. The most densely populated area is, of course, the face. What, feeling anxious again? Maybe you even decided to look in the mirror, but didn't find any mites on your face? Don't feel relieved just yet. According to statistics, 99.9% of the world's human population carry them. During the day, they hide in the follicles, feeding on the oils secreted by our own glands. And at night, they climb to the surface to find a mate. And you know what's the weirdest thing? They first latch onto us when we breastfeed as babies, and apparently they've been living on humans for a very long time. But we still know so little about them. It's like having no clue what ears are. Still, the good news is that most of these mites are probably harmless. The worst they can do is intensify your acne. The thing is, tiny mites on the skin are not the only living creatures we carry on us every day. There's something else very small right next to you. Do you see it? I'm talking about aeroplankton. These tiny creatures float and drift in the air, carried by wind, and they're so small they can be difficult to identify. That is, you look at something through a microscope and realize it looks like something alive, but what is it? Who knows? Basically, aeroplankton consists of various types of bacteria, fungi, mosses, and other similar tiny organisms. To get more accurate information, scientists collect aeroplankton with traps and sweep nets on airplanes, balloons, and even kites. On the one hand, it seems to be obvious. Well, the air is full of all sorts of microorganisms. But when I realized we are literally walking in a soup of tiny living beings? And how do you like this? These tiny creatures could come from another planet. I agree, it sounds like some kind of anti-science nonsense, but only until you check the study. Scientists at the University of Edinburgh have calculated that flows of interplanetary dust can move at speeds up to 44 miles per second. They also found that small bioparticles floating high in the atmosphere could be carried away by this dust, and since this works with outgoing organisms, it can work with incoming ones. In other words, dust flows could well have brought life to our planet. After all, we know that some bacteria and plants can survive in space, so perhaps this is how life on Earth emerged. And if some bacteria don't convince you, remember the tardigrades? These tiny invertebrates, closely related to arthropods, are considered the first known animals that survived being in outer space. Of course, not all of them lived happily ever after, but many left offspring even after such tests. Today, there are even rumors about the colonization of Mars by tardigrades, so who knows? Maybe it was ancient tardigrades that once colonized our Earth. In the end, a lot of weird stuff comes from space. The Earth even received some strange radio signal once, which people dubbed the WOW signal. It was detected on August 15, 1977, when scientists were looking for extraterrestrial civilizations and suddenly detected something very similar to intelligent alien noise. Rather, the scientists predicted some parameters expected from a signal from an extraterrestrial civilization, and the WOW signal fit perfectly into them. I won't bore you with details since they're rather confusing. I can only say that the scientific community began to doubt the nature of the signal, suspecting all sorts of human-made interference. In short, the hope to contact alien beings faded away.
All right, it's definitely an image. Let's try and stabilize it.
That didn't stop people from sending an answer to aliens, though. Indeed, why not start a dialogue if you have no idea what they just said to you and whether they actually said anything at all? In 2012, the Arecibo Observatory beamed a digital stream into space which consisted of 10,000 messages from internet users. Well, I don't know what the messages were, but I hope the aliens aren't easily offended. But if you think this is weird, then you probably haven't heard the statement of a man named Edward Makuka Nkoloso. He was heading the Zambian National Academy of Science and was about to send a space mission to Mars. I quote, "We have been studying the planet through the telescope in our secret headquarters, and now certain Mars is populated with primitive natives. Our rocket, the crew, is ready for space travel." Yeah. Nkoloso saw the population of Mars in a telescope at a secret headquarters in the 60s. In fact, it was a unique time. The space race between the USSR and the USA reached its peak, and Zambia decided to intervene. While the two superpowers tried to beat each other to the moon, Nkoloso went one step further and declared he could send people not only to the moon, but also to Mars. A 17-year-old girl, 12 missionary members, and 2 cats were supposed to fly to the Red Planet. I have no idea why they chose this crew. During their training, future astronauts, or rather as Nkoloso called them, Afronauts, rolled downhill in a big oil barrel and used a swing to simulate a freefall. Nkoloso also had a spaceship. The rocket, called DKALU-1, was a 10 by 7 foot aluminum and copper drum-shaped vessel. They say that to support his space program, Nkoloso asked for money from UNESCO and private investors, but alas, with no success, the program was canceled. After stories like that, you start thinking that in order to create something related to the space industry, you need to work for NASA or something like that. Otherwise, it won't work. Space is not a place for amateurs. But this is just an illusion. Meet Cameron Smith, professor of anthropology at Portland State University, who designed his own spacesuit. Smith worked on this project for more than 10 years. He became excited about space at the age of 8 when he watched a video about the moon landing. Now his main goal is to ascend to 59,000 feet in a hot air balloon, and although he's only managed to get to 9,840 feet so far, Smith can't be stopped. What could actually stop a person who's been stubbornly pursuing his dream for so many years? We will certainly hear more about Cameron Smith, perhaps in the very near future. In the meantime, I want you to really feel the thing I'm about to tell you. Get this. Today's urine is tomorrow's coffee.
Hot. But coffee.
Yeah, it sounds, well, disgusting to say the least. But it's true. When you're on board the ISS, water is scarce. That's when the filtration system comes to the rescue. The urine of people and animals on board the station, as well as the condensate from the breath and sweat of the crew, is recycled. According to the astronauts, the reclaimed water is cleaner than the water people drink on Earth. It tastes just like regular bottled water, but could you drink your morning coffee if you knew it was made from your colleagues' sweat or urine? If you ask me, I'm definitely not certain. Although if you think about it, the same thing happens in Dune.
A still suit is a high-efficiency filtration system.
If you haven't watched the movie or read the book, I'll explain. Still suits, that is, something like spacesuits the characters wear, are vital clothing on the planet Arrakis. These suits filter the moisture excreted by the body, turning it into drinkable water. The water keeps getting recycled, and no one feels squeamish about that. So far, however, Dune's technology remains science fiction. Today, it takes a huge amount of energy to filter the fluids produced by our body and turn them into water. Body movements will obviously not be enough. But hey, in 1965, Frank Herbert could hardly imagine the technologies he invented would become real, at least partially. Just like Ridley Scott could hardly expect the huge digital billboards from 1982's Blade Runner would also move from fiction to reality. And yet it happened. Today, digital billboards no longer surprise anyone. Although if you think about it, many things used to seem simply unrealistic, worthy of some sci-fi movie no less. Remember the self-driving cars from Total Recall? Johnny Cabs look exactly like what the people of the 80s and 90s would imagine them. That is, the car moves by itself, but someone is still behind the wheel. To be honest, this android gave me vague anxiety as a child. I think because of the uncanny valley effect. Whatever the case, since the release of the movie, we've had real unmanned vehicles. Good thing they use sensors for guidance. But of all the technologies predicted by movies, Skype struck me the most for some reason. 2001: A Space Odyssey had video calls directly from space, but in real life it took a very long time to create reliable internet and smartphones. Yes, we had different devices for video calls, but they never became popular. Today, you can make a video call session from any point of the world with an internet connection, or from the ISS. The important thing is to make a cup of coffee before that. We'll see you later.